The look on my son Marcus's face when he realized the $2,500 guest fee he'd charged me was going to cost him exactly $1.2 million, it was worth every penny of the legal fees I paid to see it. He stood there on the mahogany deck I'd paid for, mouth agape, holding a legal folder that effectively ended his life as an entitled landlord of a house he didn't own. His wife, Sarah, looked like she'd just swallowed a lemon, her eyes darting from the eviction notice to the moving truck I already had idling at the end of the driveway. But to understand why I had to systematically dismantle the very legacy I built for my children, I have to take you back to the beginning, to the day I thought I was doing the greatest thing a father could ever do for his family. I spent 42 years building a commercial HVAC business from a single rusted van into a fleet of 30. I know what hard work feels like. It feels like copper burns on your forearms and the permanent scent of machine oil in your skin. I didn't mind the long hours or the missed weekends because I had a vision. I wanted my kids, Marcus and Elena, to have the kind of stability I never had. I put them through the best universities debt-free, bought them their first cars, and even helped with the down payments on their suburban homes. But my crowning achievement, or so I thought, was the beach house in Emerald Isle. I bought that property 10 years ago for $1.2 million cash. It's a beautiful 3-story piece of architecture with wraparound decks and a private path to the Atlantic. I didn't buy it for myself. I bought it as a family legacy trust. I told Marcus and Elena that this was their house, a place for my future grandkids to grow up, a place where the family would always have a home base. I put the house into a trust, making them the beneficiaries, but I remained the trustee. I thought I was teaching them about stewardship. I thought I was being a provider. The first crock in the foundation appeared about 3 years ago. I'd driven down to the coast on a Tuesday just to check on the HVAC system, force of habit, and found the locks had been changed. When I called Marcus, he sounded annoyed. He told me they'd installed a smart lock system because they were managing the schedule now. He didn't offer me the code. He just said, "Dad, we've got a lot of friends using the place this summer. Just clear it with Sarah before you head down next time." I felt a twinge of disappointment, but I brushed it off. I told myself it was just a phase, that they were finally taking ownership of their inheritance like I'd wanted. I didn't realize that in their minds, I was already a ghost in my own house. That should have been my wake-up call, but I kept telling myself I was being a sensitive old man. Then came the Thanksgiving incident. I arrived at the beach house, after clearing it with Sarah 2 months in advance, to find my daughter Elena's in-laws occupying the master suite. My suite, the one I designed with the extra firm mattress for my bad back. Marcus told me, without looking me in the eye, that the guest cottage over the garage is actually much quieter for someone your age, Dad. I spent that Thanksgiving listening to my son-in-law Dave brag about his real estate portfolio while drinking my 20-year-old scotch. When I tried to tell a story about the early days of the business, Elena actually rolled her eyes and interrupted me to ask if I'd remember to bring the artisan rolls she liked. They didn't see me as the man who built the roof over their heads. They saw me as a retired bank account that had outlived its usefulness. If that was all, I probably would have just faded into the background and spent my winters in Florida. But then came the invoice.
6 months ago, I called Marcus and told him I wanted to spend a full week at the house in July. I needed the salt air. My joints were aching, and I just wanted to sit on a deck and read. Marcus hesitated on the phone. "July is peak season, Dad," he said. "We usually rent it out to some of Dave's business associates during that window to cover the administrative costs of the trust." I reminded him that there were no administrative costs because I was still paying the property taxes and the insurance out of my own pocket. He cleared his throat, sounding bored. "Look, I'll talk to Elena and Sarah. We'll see if we can squeeze you in." 3 days later, I received an automated email from a property management software Marcus had set up. It was a formal booking confirmation for the Henderson Beach estate. At the bottom was an invoice for $2,500. The line item read, "Family guest maintenance and utility fee." I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at that screen. I called Marcus, thinking it was a joke. "Dad, it's just business," he said, and I could hear the smugness in his voice. "We have to keep the trust professional. If you're using the house during a prime week, you're displacing revenue. $2,500 is actually a family discount. Sarah thought we should charge $5,000. And that's when I realized they didn't see me as their father. They didn't even see me as a person. I was just a line item they were trying to optimize. Something in me shifted that day. It wasn't a hot, burning anger. It was something much colder, a quiet, clinical clarity. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply said, "I see. I'll take care of it." I didn't send a Venmo.
Instead, I made a different kind of call. I called my old friend Miller, a man who had been my corporate attorney for 30 years. He knew the trust documents because he'd helped me draft them. "Miller," I said, leaning back in my chair, "I need you to look at the revocation and mismanagement clause in the Emerald Isle Trust, and I need you to do it very quietly." I spent the next 2 months getting everything in order. My children had no idea what was coming. None of them did. While they were busy planning their summer parties and posting photos of their beach house on Instagram, I was documenting every cent I had spent on the property since the trust was formed. I was also documenting the revenue Marcus and Dave had been pocketing from those private rentals, money that was supposed to stay within the trust, but was instead being used to fund Dave's country club membership and Sarah's new SUV. The family guest fee was the final nail in their coffin. By charging me to stay in a house I funded, they had violated the settler's unimpeded access provision I'd tucked into the fine print a decade ago. But more importantly, by pocketing rental income without reporting it to the trustee, they had committed a fiduciary breach. I waited for the right moment. I wanted them all together. I chose the Saturday of my rented week. I'd paid the $2,500. I'd played the part of the compliant aging father. I arrived at the house at 6 p.m., just as they were firing up the grill for a big party. Marcus, Alina, Dave, and Sarah were all there, surrounded by their high society friends. "Dad, you're here," Marcus said, not even looking up from the grill. "Did you get the guest cottage key from the lockbox? We've got the main house pretty full tonight, so try to keep your stuff over there." "I have everything I need right here, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, the same tone I used when I had to fire a subcontractor for shoddy work. I walked into the center of the deck where a dozen people were sipping cocktails. I didn't make a scene. I just pulled a manila folder from under my arm and laid it on the glass table. "What's this?" Sarah asked, her smart Audie starting to fade. "Is it the check for the cleaning deposit?"
"Not exactly," I said. "It's a notice of trust revocation and an immediate eviction order." The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the crashing of the waves and the sizzle of the steaks Marcus had just ruined. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Alina laughed, though it sounded forced. "You put this house in a trust for us. It's ours." "It was a trust for you," I said, looking her directly in the eyes, "provided you followed the rules of that trust. Rule 1, I have lifelong cost-free access to this property. You charged me $2,500 to enter my own house. Rule 2, all rental income must be reinvested into the trust for property maintenance. You and Dave have been skimmed over $80,000 in the last 2 years into your personal accounts." Marcus stepped forward, his face turning a deep shade of purple. "You can't do this. We have a deed. We have rights." "You have a deed to a trust that I just dissolved," I said. I pulled out a second document. "This is the deed transfer. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, the property has been sold to a private holding company. I am no longer the trustee, I am no longer the owner, and you are no longer the beneficiaries." "Sold?" Dave stammered, his cocktail glass trembling. "To who?" "To me," I said, "through my business entity, and I've already signed the papers to list it on the open market tomorrow morning. The proceeds won't be going to you. They'll be going into my private retirement fund. Since I'm such a burden and a guest in your lives, I figured I'd better make sure I can afford a very, very nice nursing home when the time comes." The color drained from Sarah's face. She looked at the guests, who were now awkwardly shuffling toward the stairs, realizing the party was over in the most humiliating way possible. "You're kicking us out?" Elena whispered. "Where are we supposed to go? We have the kids here." "You have 4 hours to pack your bags and your children," I said, checking my watch. "The moving company I hired is waiting at the gate. They'll help you move your personal belongings into the driveway. Anything left in this house after 10 p.m. becomes the property of the staging company I've hired to prep this place for the weekend showing." Marcus tried to lunge toward me, but he stopped when he saw Miller, my lawyer, walking up the stairs with a sheriff's deputy. I'd planned for everything. I knew my son. I knew his temper. "Dad, please," Marcus started to plead, his voice cracking. "We were just trying to be responsible. We didn't mean anything by the fee. It was just business." "I know, Marcus," I said, patting him on the shoulder as I walked past him toward the master suite. "And this is just business too. You taught me that. I'm just a guest here, remember? And as it turns out, I'm a guest who's decided he doesn't like the management." I spent that night in the master suite. I slept better than I had in years. I could hear them outside in the driveway, arguing, crying, and loading suitcases into their cars under the glare of the sheriff's headlights. They tried to call me, they tried to pound on the door, but I just turned up the volume on the television and watched the news. The aftermath was exactly what I expected. The house sold 3 weeks later for $1.4 million. The market was hot. After taxes and fees, I had a clean $1 million cushion. I didn't give them a cent. I didn't need to.
They both had high-paying jobs in the homes I'd helped them buy. They weren't going to be homeless. They were just going to be less important. They'd lost the crown jewel of their social status, and that hurt them more than the money ever could.
Marcus calls me every Sunday now. He's very polite. He asks about my health. He asks if I need anything. He hasn't mentioned money or guest fees once in the last 6 months. Elena sends me photos of the grandkids every day. It's amazing how quickly people remember their family values when the fountain of free assets dries up. I'm currently sitting on a balcony in a small villa in Italy. I'm staying here for a month. It's expensive, but I don't mind. I'm not a guest here. I'm a customer who is treated with the respect I've earned. I'm not bitter. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just at peace. I spent 40 years building a legacy for my children, but in the end, I had to teach them the most important lesson of all. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. And if you treat your father like a transaction, don't be surprised when he closes the account. My son's latest voicemail is sitting in my inbox. He wants to know if I'm coming home for Christmas. He says they've already set up the guest room for me, the big one with the firm mattress. I think I'll make him wait a few more days for an answer. After all, I'm still checking the administrative costs of my schedule. Funny how that works.